Let's build the HRail frame. Let's get started. In the kit, we'll have some zip ties, Velcro. We're going to have the controller mount and the screws for it and the spacers for it. We'll do that later. Let's go ahead and get this going. That's our motor mounts, battery straps, the wood, and our components for our T's and our battery holder and our controller. We have all the components out. There you go. These are going to be the arms. And this is for the body. So let's go ahead and put the arms through. Now these are going to be a tight fit, so it's not bad to go ahead and use a hammer if you need to. So these are TPU parts. And we want to center this up, and we need these at about 2 3/4 from here to the end. What we can do on this will make it a little bit easier is to go ahead and mark it, at least on one side. We'll go ahead and put this one in. And once again, some of these are tight. It's good. Just press it in. Okay. Now we have that on. Next we're going to do our motor mounts. And what we want to do here, we're going to drill a hole, and there's a circle. I guess that's where the part is pushed out. These are injection molded. And you go right in the center and you'll see it there when you have it in hand. Just drill an 1/8 inch hole. There you go. We're going to do the rest of them. Okay, we have that done. It doesn't matter which side is up or down. Just keep them all the same. We're going to use it for a pilot hole in the wood. And let's make sure it's flush here. Flush with the end of the wood. We'll be using 5/8 screws on the motor mounts. 5/8 long screws. All these screws are number 4. You can find them pretty much anywhere, any of the big box stores. Okay. Again, make sure it's flush. We're going to drill our pilot hole into the wood. That's just to keep it from splitting. And we'll put, again, a 5/8 long screw. Now we're going to do the other two. Okay, we have that done. Whenever you drill the pilot hole with the 1/16 inch bit, You need to just go, you know, like halfway. You don't have to go all the way. So we have that. Okay, now this is going to be where our controller is going to mount. This is going to be our battery mount. And we need to glue these two pieces together. And I'm using CA glue or super glue. And if it's on like this, you'll see this pad here. And you see these pads. And you want them to go like this. Not this. This. So these pads are going to match these pads. And then you want to push it all the way down. And you'll see that it's all the way down here. Looks good. And also you'll see that the pads here and these pads are together. Not this way, but this way. Okay, so let's let it dry for a little while. And now that it's dried really well, this is going to slide onto our main frame. And you'll see now why we want to make sure when this is glued on, the pad is this way and the pad is that way. Okay. We can go ahead and put these on, the T's, and we'll push them all the way in. And once this one's in, let's push this, and you'll see right here, it will butt up to it. And put this one on. This is where your motor is going to mount. You want to make sure that's facing up, and that's when we want to do that right now. Push it together, and you'll see that's together, and that's together. Here, we're going to use our You do not have to go all the way through. We're going to do the same here. And here. And we'll get our 5/8 screws again. And you should have some extras. We'll get these started. I normally use a screwdriver and do it by hand, but this works here. I like to finish it off. Once it's pulled, you don't want it to go too far, break anything. And then I'll double check it. I don't normally put a screw into here to hold this piece of wood this way, unless the wood is a little bit loose. Sometimes you get it like that. But normally you have to push it in pretty hard. But if it does move after you put it in, just drill your screw here and here. Just use an 1/8 inch bit and drill through just the plastic, and then use to go through the wood, and that'll lock it all in. You'll see that you get some movement in this. It's supposed to. And here you go. Now we're ready to put the motors on and start doing the controls. This is Danny. See you next time. Installing the motors. Super easy to do. We're using a 2204 Sunny Sky motors on this one. We need to put the X mount on. All of our mounts, our motor mounts currently use X mounts. And then they're zip tied onto the frames. Later this summer, we're going to have them screwed on instead of zip tie, or the option of, rather, either way. But that's in a few months. So let's go ahead and get this ready. If you're using different screws or a different X mount, which that could happen, always make sure that the screws do not get into the windings, meaning touch the winding. If it does, you'll burn your motor out, possibly burn your ESC all at the same time. So always make sure that the screws, don't go in too far. You can test that by putting a screw in and just really checking it close to make sure it doesn't. Now these are sold together. They're not mixed matched, so it will it's okay to put these in, no problem. But if you're using a different cross, double check that. So we'll line them up. These motors, or these holes rather, are 16 and 19 millimeter apart, and so you'll have to line them up to make sure they're right. Just turn them, and that's not right. Looks like I had it right to start with. There. Now they line up. Just hold it, and we're using a #1 screw, or screwdriver rather, and tighten them up. Normally, putting Loctite on this is really good. It keeps putting it on the screw, and it keeps the screw from backing out, and you could lose a motor and it'll crash. The way our motor mounts are designed and the way this is installed, they very rarely back out, so you should use Loctite. I don't, and to be honest with you, I normally don't, and I really don't have a problem with it, or haven't had a problem with it. I'm going to get a little bit bigger screwdriver to tighten them up. A little bit bigger screwdriver. You want to hold it and tighten them up pretty good. You don't want them loose. Tighten them up good, and there you go. You'll have a few extra screws. Save them. You never know. I've already put these on, and we'll go ahead and fasten these. We'll get our zip ties out. It'd be really handy to have some of these extra. You can get these at the big box stores, or you can get these at Amazon, most every place. These are 4 inches long, and they're 18 pound. So you look for that and you're in good shape. There's a couple ways to put the motors on. You can put them this way and run the wiring straight. I normally put them this way, and I'll show you why in a second. And let's go ahead and get some zip ties in. There is a couple of different X mounts, and these holes here can be a little bit off. These are a little bit off, but what I do is get them all started, all the zip ties started. You don't want to tighten them up yet. They get all four started. And then tighten them up a little bit at a time, all the way around. And you'll see that even though the holes are a little bit off, they're like a millimeter off, it doesn't hurt it. I normally grab them across from each other, these two, and just pull apart. Pull pretty good, pull hard, and the same thing with this one, and pull hard. You can also use, let me get them out, needle nose pliers, and you can just grab them like this to tighten them up. So you can do it that way also. Okay? I'll take my wire cutters and I cut them real close, and I'll show you why in a second. I cut them close here, all the way down. If you cut them like this gets really sharp and it can, you know, catch you, stick you. So just push it all the way to here and then cut it, and you'll see works pretty good. Just always make sure you have them facing away from you whenever you cut them, and anybody else working with you. Now install them this way because the motors or the motor wiring is going to go like this, and it's going to go to the controller here eventually. But by doing it like this, makes a pretty neat job. And also you'll have your prop here. If you crash, these props can bend or break, and if they get into the wiring, you know, they'll cut the wires. So this keeps it clean, and I think it looks a little bit better. So we'll zip tie this later on to neaten this up, and that's what it's going to look like. Let's get the others on. Okay. The motors are on, and we'll make them look better a little bit later when we tidy up the wiring after our controller is installed. Super easy to do. Your motors are installed, and in the future, if you have a motor you need to change, it's a matter of just unplugging the motor after it's installed. Super easy. Now that our motors are installed, we're ready to start our controls. See you next time. We're ready to install the controls on the HRail. We're going to be using Emax F4 Magnum. Makes for a great case for storing other things. Anyway, here's your controller. Be careful getting it out. It takes a little bit. It's in there well. Okay, here's your controller. This is your VTX, your actual controller, and your 4-in-1 ESC. With it comes sticker, the plug, and capacitor. We're not going to use it on this one. We'll see how it goes and see if we need to install it. If you had a lot of interference on your camera, we're not having that problem. But if you do, then installing the capacitor can either eliminate it or get really close to eliminating it. If you do install it, we'll go over it in a minute. There's a polarity that has to be, watched out for, a negative and a positive. But we'll get deeper in that a little bit later. This is a antenna mount. This will click on here for your controller, onto your controller rather, or your VTX rather. And you can mount an antenna. This is another with the antenna included, and we're going to use this one. There's some wiring here. I don't think we're going to use this. The battery lead that's going to be soldered onto the ESC, we're going to use a little bit smaller wiring for this, which is perfect for what we're doing. And it's included with the kit that you got, or the stem kit that you got. It also comes with a Turnigy receiver. We're not going to use that. We're using the Turnigy Evolution, and of course we'll install that a little bit later, but save this for sure. It's a great receiver, great radio. So we'll put that there, and we'll put the antenna there. This is the receiver that we're going to use. This is the receiver, and this is the wiring we will use to install on the controller. First of all, I know for sure we're going to remove this wire. Let's do it now while we have it here. And you just, get a knife or a pen. Be careful doing it. Just lift up the tab, and when you do, you can pull out the wire. Okay, we're going to save this. I would save all these items that you don't use. You never know when you're going to need it. So we'll wind up cutting this off here. In fact, let's do it now. Okay, again, save the connector. This is where it's going to be soldered onto a controller, and we'll do that in a little bit. So with this, we'll get this kind of ready, and we'll just peel this wiring back a little bit, so we'll get it ready to solder. If you don't have fingernails, sometimes mine don't work. You just skin it on the end. If you've not good at soldering, you definitely want to take a look at a couple of videos that are online, and there's some good ones out there. And you want to practice before you start soldering some of this really small stuff. Quickly though, you get the hang of it, but I would definitely have somebody help you if you've never done it before on the small, because this is ready. Because you can ruin the ESC really quick if it's, if you have a problem soldering on. So get help on that for sure, if you're not good at it yet. You will be soon. This is a sticker we're going to remove in a little bit. That's for the buzzer. But as we start installing it, we'll get a little bit deeper into this. First of all, let's go ahead and do this first. Get these pulled apart. Definitely want to save these screws. They can come in handy in the future. We're not using any of these. It's all included in your stem kit here, all your spacers. And you want to be, very careful when you open this bag. These little round spacers will run away from you. And just be careful when you open it up so you don't lose any. Like I said, we're going to reuse these. And like I was saying before, save these. You never know when you're going to need them. Okay, this board here, the controller, plugs into the ESC right here. You have to be really careful when you put it on and you take it off. Just take your time and you'll see. There. That's what we're talking about. And you want to put this somewhere where, it's not mishandled. If you dislodge any of these components, obviously it doesn't work anymore. It's ruined. So handling it on the corners is the best way. Just take your time. We're going to remove these pieces, or these plastic parts. And again, I would save all these. So let's finish getting this off. Okay. While I'm here, or getting this pulled off, I'm going to pick up these pieces and we'll store them away. Great storage bin. Okay. Like I was saying earlier, be careful. Let me move this over here. Also, this is the camera in there. And we'll get that out in a minute. The FPV camera. Okay. We're going to use this right now. And as I was saying, be careful with the spacers. When they come out, they'll go all over the place and they'll be gone. A good way I found to do this is not to use a real smooth surface like this. I use an old towel, a thin towel. If you have like a kitchen towel, if you're okay with you using it, is rested on there and you'll find that it doesn't roll all over the place. An old shirt, a t-shirt, something like that. Okay? We're going to take 4 of these. We're using, this is set up so you can use a 20 by 20, and you would have to drill this out a little bit bigger, these 4. 20 by 20 controller mount, but we're going to use the 30 or 30.5 millimeter setup. And so the only thing I'm doing is, we'll have a spare screw there. The only thing I'm doing here is installing the, pushing the screws through. Okay, now we'll have to decide which is front or back. Right now, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna make this front. Either way, it's good. If we're making this the front, this is gonna wind up going like this. So it's gonna go just like that. And we'll push this down. It's tight, that's what we want. So just take your time, push it on. Hope I'm not covering you up. I'm really bad about that, the way the camera is set up. I'll get my arm in front of you. There. So all I'm doing is pushing it down. And then we'll make sure the screws are pushed all the way. When it's done, that's what we want it to look like. How to do? There. Yeah, you want to make sure you don't get the wires pinched. It will hurt them. Okay. You can see it's pushed all the way down now. Okay. Again, this is going to be front when it's finished. Front. All this wiring to be cleaned up a little bit later, and it'll look nice and pretty when we're done. You'll notice here we have a built-in standoff, and that's for your, and the first piece down is going to be your ESC. Now we're going to turn this like this. If you remember, this is where this plugs into here. So when it's plugged in, normally you would have this arrow facing direction of flight. We're turning it like this. So whenever we do the Betaflight setup on the controller, we're going to take all this into consideration. We're actually going to turn or adjust some of the motor locations, going to the from the ESC to the motor, and we're also going to adjust the difference in the controller, and we'll show it as turned 270 degrees. Okay. Well, we'll do all that coming up when we set up Betaflight. No big deal, easy to do. But we just have to remember to do that. So we're going to slide this down. Take your time on this. If you get in a hurry with this, you can break your ESC. You don't want to do that. But you can see it's seated down on there really good. And this is where we're going to have to add a piece of wire on when we solder this on. And we're going to add a piece of wire and a connector so that we can remove the motors, remove the controller, change them out, do whatever you want. So we have to have a piece of wire that's going to go from here to here. I've measured that out. The wire is 1.75 inches, and after you solder on the connector, and I also have some heat shrinker that I put on there, tube shrink tube. Whenever you have this put on, you'll see what it looks like after we're all said and done. This is going to solder on there, and this will be, tucked away right here really nice. So this is going to work perfect for this. You can make yours longer if you want to. You really can't make them any shorter. But 1.75 inches wire and it's in the stem kit. It's furnished with the stem kit. So cut it 1 3/4 long, the wire, and put your connector on, solder your connector on. And of course, you know, put the shrink tube on. And we'll be ready to start our soldering. So here's the pieces I'm going to use, and need to go ahead and get this soldered up, and I'll be back. Okay, all the soldering is done onto the ESC. I use 16 gauge wire here, and it's plenty good for what we're doing. They're 3.5 inches long. Again, these are 20 gauge, and they're 1 3/4 inches long. And then you solder the connector on, so it makes it, you know, a total when you put it on. Let's just see, of about 2 1/4 or 2 3/8 inches long after it's, you know, the connector's put on. Okay, so we're ready to just wire these in. The rotation of the motors we'll check later. We'll do that with the program BlHeli. And when we do this setup, we'll go through all of that. But for right now, I'm just plugging them in to make it look neat. Or as neat as we can now until we finish up, and then we'll put our wire ties on. So we're going to do this number. This is what it'll look like when it's done. And then this will be tucked down here. In fact, I'll do one in a second. Let's get these plugged in. Okay, I got everything tidied up here. To just take your time, and you can trim up the wires to where it looks really nice. And the better they're trimmed out like this, it helps out if you have crashes, you know, to keep everything intact. Okay, so all we did, you know, is ran the wires here, plugged them in, and worked it around the mounting piece. So that's what it looks like. And I think it turns out pretty good. We're going to secure this when we're done, because if you have a crash, and you will, if the battery is ejected, and it will, can put a lot of stress. It can put a lot of stress here and pull these pads and actually ruin the ESC. So we're going to secure it, so it'll help to keep this from being a problem here. But we'll do that after a while. But you can see how we did that. We put a zip tie here to tidy it all up. Another thing we're going to do real quick is test it. Since we did all the soldering, we just want to make sure that we check it with a continuity checker, just to make sure nothing's shorted. We're going to set it up to where we get a tone. Okay, and let's go ahead and check it here. Okay, we're looking good there. We checked it from positive to negative, or from your black to your red. No tone. We touch them together, you get a tone. No tone. So we look good. So you always want to double check that. So everything looks good there. So next we're going to take our controller with the VTX on it, and we're going to solder the camera wires. And here you'll have a negative, positive 5 volt, and then you'll have the video in, VN, and it's all listed here. And it says camera right there. Here on UART3, and that's here, we're going to ground your 5 volt positive and RX3. So UART3 is here. Ground, positive, RX3. We're going to get that sorted on. The wires we're going to use, this is the receiver wire. If you remember, we just prepped that. And that's going to go here. That's going to go on UART3. And I got out the camera wire, and that came with our camera. We'll have a little bag with wiring and some mounts. We're only going to use the wiring, keep it all though. And on this wire you have a plug on one end and a plug on the other end. I cut it about, let's see how long, 2.5 to 3 inches. I'd cut it about 3 inches long. Okay, and again, there's your ground, there's your positive, and there's your video in, and that's going to go right there. So we're going to get this soldered up. Okay, we have this soldered on. This is our receiver and our camera. Let's go ahead and peel this off. That's our buzzer. We've gotten that off. We're ready to plug this in now. Remembering that this is the plug here, and this is it here. And again, this is going to be the front, and it's facing this way now, 270 degrees. So let's go ahead and get this plugged in. Again, take your time. And this is going to be a 6mm spacer that goes here. So you have a 4 and a 6, so let's get the longest one. And where's the other? There's the 4s. Another 4. There it is here. Okay. Again, take your time. And we'll want to match up these connectors, and just take your time doing it. You don't want them to get crossed because it will ruin it. So there it goes. It's slid in there nicely. We'll have a few shadows in here today. It's super cloudy outside, but I think you can see it there. Okay, that's in. Just take a quick look around. Everything looks good. Got plenty of room in between each, and that looks good. You know, we're almost done. Here, let's put the 4mm spacer. I try to run from you. And here, we'll get this started. Once again, just take your time. You know what? Before we do that, let's do something. I almost forgot. I do this all the time too. It seems like. Little trick: use your needle nose pliers. It makes it a lot easier. Our antenna. We need to go ahead and put this on. This is where it's going to go right here. That's the plug. And it clips on. So just take your time again. And we'll install the plug or the antenna. You'll hear it snap when it goes down, when it connects. There, you heard it. It clipped on. We're going to run it up through here, so let's just, I push down on the plug right here just to hold it in place. And we're going to do just like this. Okay. This is going to your receiver. So it's going to come up this way and over, and we'll do that in a minute. This is going to be the camera. Let's do this. Again, be careful. What I did too when I soldered this, I put a little bit of hot glue all the way across here to give it a little bit of strain release on the wiring. And I did the same thing here for your receiver wiring. Put a little hot glue on there. It helps out. So we're going to tuck this over and very gently roll this back like that. That's going to be your camera. And now we're ready to put this on. Now here too, we're going to tuck this back. Just real gently push it back. After it's done, you know, there'll be no problem, but just take your time pushing this back on your receiver wiring. Tuck it down underneath here like that. And let's continue pushing this down. We've ran our antenna through here. Let's make sure also that none of the wires are being pinched, you know, when you push this down. So just take your time. Take you a couple minutes, but taking your time, you'll get it done. Now here, there's no wires pinched here. Nothing here. Nothing here for your camera. And now it's pushed all the way down. You're in good shape. Your antenna sticking out, you're in good shape. Now here, we might as well go ahead and put our receiver on. We're going to tidy up this wire and this wire in a minute, but we're going to just get it all installed first. So you want to get some double-sided tape. And we're going to cut this down so it fits here. So we'll measure it out and cut it down a little bit. We'll go ahead and get this installed. We have a couple jets flying over. I don't know if you hear that in here, but now when we plug it in, you'll see it says ground, VCC, that's your power. And this is iBus, S-Bus. We took the other wire off, if you remember. We're not going to use that. So it goes just like this. You're going to, and of course it only goes in one way. But the black is your ground, red is your VCC, and your iBus or S-Bus is white. So it's going to slide in. Another way you can do it, just check your pins inside, and you'll see that one's closer to one side than the other, and just make sure they match up. Don't force them. If it's not one to go in, you may have it backwards. So we'll go ahead and stick this on right here. And we'll tuck this wire in. Now we have another version of this coming out where we'll have a hole here so you can see your channels when you change them. For right now, you'll have to lift this up a little bit, set your channels, and this is where you do it right here. There's a little button here on the side, and that's where you'll change your channels. So you can go ahead and cut yourself a hole in here if you want to. You know, I fly with a certain group of guys. I stay on one channel pretty much all the time. So you can lift this up, set your channel, put it back, and let everybody know that's what you're flying on. But we'll have an addition to that, or a revision on this, where it'll show through. But for right now, works great. This is done. Your receiver. We'll secure this down a little bit later to keep this out of the props. That'll be next. For your camera, we're using RunCam Swift. I think it's the Mini Swift. Yes, Swift Mini. Let's get some screws out. We're almost done. Okay, we have our screws, our 2 screws. That's what they look like. We'll get it started, just started in it. Again, make sure polarity is correct. Says here 5 volt ground, or 5 volts, then ground and video. And we know that red is your 5 volts, black is going to be your ground. And again, this goes in one way. Double check your pins, they're to the top. Make sure they're the same way here. I always like just to double check the wiring, make sure the polarity is correct. And there you go. We'll tuck this in. We're going to screw it into the middle. You can see this pretty fast build, and especially setting up your controls. The way we're doing this, if you have a little bit higher stack, it can go higher. It pulls the camera in a little bit, not too bad. And it also, if it's a little bit shorter stack, it works. It's a good way to do it. And like I said, when you use this Emax stack that they have, wow, the soldering's not bad. Everything's right here. You do this with quite a few other different controllers too. It's not just stuck with the one. There you go. You can tighten this up a little while, or tighten this up after a while when you set the angle you want to be at. It holds really well when you tighten this down. It's not going anywhere. And there you go. Makes a real nice setup. Now we're going to move these screws out of the way. Put them back. Again, save them all. Because it goes with some other components of the camera, if you're going to put a separate mount, and you'll have it to do it. Okay, let's put this on. And I use this, I mean, you could end it right there and just trim these off, no problem. But I put this piece on top. It protects this a little bit. You do not have to have it, but you know, I normally do it. Let's go ahead and remount these a little bit. I'm using an 1/8 inch bit. Okay, we got these drilled out. I'm going to put that on, and you'll see that it really sandwiches in between really nice. And we'll put our screws on, or our nuts on. When you tighten this down in a minute, just do it evenly. You don't have to be crazy tight. It holds really well. Okay, you'll see that this isn't all the way. That's what we're doing. And just make sure you don't pinch any wires. So we'll tighten this one up a little bit. And we'll go to this one. We'll just work our stuff, or work it all the way around, tighten it up. Like I said, you don't have to get crazy with it. So you can see I'm not twerking it down crazy at all. Okay. Then we'll make sure the tops are tight. Okay, it's nice and tight. We'll have to pull this off in a minute because we're going to bind the receiver. So we'll take that off in a little bit. But everything seems to be good. Nice and tight everywhere. After we do the controls, we'll secure this. We'll secure this. We'll install this again back on. And we'll install this back on. Tighten it down. We'll trim the screws here. And we're just going to cut them off. Before you do that, you may want to take in consideration if you're going to put a camera mount, you know, GoPro or whatever camera mount on top. They screw right on like that. So you may want to cut these a little bit longer so you can put this on. But we'll go through that. But this is your controls installed. Next, we're going to put it on Betaflight and get it set up. This is dealing with QuadLugs. We'll see you next time. Let's go over a few things with the Turnigy Evolution radio. First off, we'll take off the cover and we'll turn it on. Go ahead and go over the manual. It'll show you how to charge. All you do is plug in a USB here into the transmitter, and you plug it into the computer and it'll charge itself. Of course, it'll give you identification right there. Like right now, it's about halfway charged. We have another model already picked, but we'll go ahead and get started in that in a minute. This is switch A, B, C. And you also have switch here, a roller. And we're not going to use it, so you can just push it in while it's not being used. Okay, you can see these light up and change. You can control the lighting here, and again, we'll go through that in a second, and the manual can run you through that. Or there's tons of videos on, on the internet. Just get on YouTube, and plenty of information in there. Let's go ahead and pick a model, and we'll hit up, select a model, and we'll go here will be number 4, but whichever one you're on. And we'll go ahead and back out. It says yes, and we'll pick a name. Scroll down, model name. Let's go back here, and if we hit the back button, you can see it's erasing it, and that's what we want to do. We'll hit the capital. Let's name this HRail. And of course, you name it what you want. And there we go. We'll back out. Yes. And we'll back out again. And there we are, HRail. Let's go ahead, and first of all, if you notice now, switch A, switch B here. 3 position switches. I'm sorry, this is A, this is B, and this is C. So B, C, and you'll see what happens here when we move it. And right now, these are in conjunction or work together, but we don't want to. We're going to change that. Right now, switch A, or switch B rather, you can see it here. And switch C, you can see it here. Let's go to switch C. We're going to put that on null, and that way C doesn't work anymore, just A. And we're good with that. Let's go into mode, and let's back out. Capitalize it. We're going to call this Addy. And again, whatever you want it to be. These are going to be some of the modes we're going to set up in a little bit. Now you'll see it's Addy. Here we'll go to the middle position. There. And we'll back out again to clear it. We're going to call this Horizon. And again, this is going to be another mode that we're going to set up when we go to Betaflight. And we're HRZI. We'll back out again. You see it there. We'll go all the way down on the switch, away from you. And let's clear it. And we're going to name this one Acro Trainer. Okay, let's back out. out. And again, you can name this anything you want. And now you'll see that's all the way up on this switch, and horizon and acro trainer. Okay, we have our modes set up. Now the other thing we want to do on modes, if you notice in every position here, you can set a value. So we're going to pick that number and we're going to go down. We're going to set this at 1100, and we'll look at that when we're in the program again, setting up modes. With the checkpoint, or we'll hit check to save it. Horizon we're going to leave at 1500, and acro, here we're going to run this up to like 1900, 18 to 1900. We'll leave it there. We can adjust it later when we're actually in Betaflight setting up the controller. So here we go, ADDI at 1100, Horizon 15, and Acro Trainer at 18. So now we're set up. And again, when we're into Betaflight, we'll adjust that. Here you can set your timers. I'm not going to do that. We're actually going to, on OSD, in our in Betaflight, we're going to set up a low battery alert. So I'm not going to do that here. But again, it's in the manual and it's all over the internet. Or if you need some help from me, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to help you through that. I use them all the time, especially for planes. Let's go back. Let's go into the system now. We've already picked our model. We don't want to mess with reversing yet. We're not going to mess with endpoints yet. Auxiliary channels. We're actually going to use C to arm our motors. So let's set that up in the transmitter. So we'll go to auxiliary channels. Let's go to 6, and we're going to pick the switch we're going to use, and that's going to be C. Remember, A, B, C. So we're going to pick that and say yes. And we can swipe over one that gives us our battery, how it's charged or what value it's at, how charged it is. And we're going to go this way. And if you notice, channel 2 is your pitch. Channel 1 is your aileron. Channel 3 is your throttle. Channel 4 is your rudder or yaw. Channel 5 is the mode switch we just set. Channel 6 is the channel that we're going to use, and the switch we're going to use to arm the motors. You can see it working there. And it goes all the way up to 8 if you're setting other things. Okay? So let's go ahead and swipe back. And let's get back in it. Subtrim we're not going to mess with right now. Failsafe we're not going to mess with right now. We are going to check it, and with the receiver that we're going to be using on this, that automatically sets a failsafe. So we'll check it done. We'll make sure it's working. If you ever need to set that up again, you always want to make sure failsafe works. And what that means is that if you lose power or if you lose signal, it's going to do what you tell it to do. If it's set with the plane or multi-rotor flying. So in other words, if it's not set, it's just going to continue going, and you don't want that. You want to, I basically set it so that it just drops out of the sky. I want it to land and land quick, or crash rather, crash quick so it doesn't, cause any injury to anybody. If you get into that situation though, always make sure your failsafe works. We're going to bind, in a little while, we're going to bind the receiver. LED setup, and that's going to be to set these up again, check your manual. output mode, we're going to use PPM and iBus. And we'll check that when we're in Betaflight. Stick mode, we're in mode 2, and most everyone here in the US flies mode 2. So you really don't have to do anything with that, but we just check. And pretty much I think we're done. Now the firmware, we've already updated it here, but you know, I would update it when you first get one. Okay, and I think that's about it on here. So our radio is ready to get into Betaflight to set this thing up. Okay, we're going to bind your Turnigy Evolution transmitter to your receiver. So let's go to receiver bind. What we'll need to do is hold this little button right here down while you plug in. It's easier if you have two people. Okay. Okay. Now let's let it go. You can see the light is blinking. Let's go ahead and disconnect the power. And we'll get out of binding. This particular receiver does not have telemetry. If you did, it would show here under RX that the receiver is bound. But let's go ahead and plug it back in, the quad. And if we get a steady light, it means that it's bound. So that's all you have to do to bind. Just go, again, receiver bind. Hold the little button down, plug it in. You'll get a series of tones. Your red light will be blinking on your receiver. Unplug it, get out of this mode, plug it back in, and you're good to go. Pretty simple. See you next time. We're going to be using Betaflight to set up our controller. So I'll go ahead and list in the description the link to download Betaflight, to also download BlHeli, which we'll more than likely need. And also ImpulseRC. All this will be linked at the bottom or in the description. Okay. Okay, after everything's downloaded, go ahead and pull up Betaflight, and then we're going to plug in the USB cable. Okay, before we plug in the computer, let's go to firmware flasher. And we're going to be using an Omnibus F4. If that's not listed here, you can just go into the pull down and find it. The information on the type of the board that we're using in our controller setup is in the manual, and actually it's on the very front of that manual. And that came with your controller. Here we're going to choose the latest version that's stable, and there we go right there. And we'll leave this the way it is. We'll load the firmware. Okay, now that that's done, let's go ahead and plug in the computer. Let me interrupt for just a second. You have your cable plugged into your controller, but one thing before you plug into the computer, press the boot button, and it's located right here, and it's also located on your manual. It'll show you where it's at, but it's right here. Press in the boot button and then plug it in. Now after you press the flash button and it does not flash, it fails to flash, pull up ImpulseRC, and that will allow then the flashing of the controller. With all the drivers that you downloaded with the program, you'll still more than likely need this to get it to work. Let it do its thing, and then let's hit flash firmware, and you can see here it's erasing everything. And we'll let it go through its thing. And it's flashing it now. So in the description, all those links are there. Get them downloaded, load all the related drivers that goes with it, and it'll tell you what it means. Okay, says it is successful, and that's good to know. Okay, with it plugged in, let's go ahead and go to connect. You'll see that if you move the quad around, it's not acting like it should. It's different directions. But if you'll remember that we had turned the controller and the ESCs, to the left, pointing to the left. So we'll correct that in just a minute. Let's go to UART3. And this is serial receiver. If you remember, we used the Evolution receiver, and we sorted it into UART3 when we did the install. Let's save, and it'll reboot. Let's go to configuration, and of course, this is what we're using, xCloud. This is the front, this is the back, and that's just how we are set up front and back. We'll leave all this the way it is. And here, we'll put 270. That's going to correct for how we turned the controller and the ESC. We turned it to the left and we moved it 270 degrees. Let's do save and reboot. So real quickly, if we take a look here, we're facing, and you'll see that it matches now. Okay, everything's working. At this point, make sure that your quad is flat, on a table, and go ahead and select Calibrate Accelerometer. When that's completed, the controller will know what's level, and you'll be ready to proceed on. So let's go back to configuration, or move on to configuration. And we'll leave all this the way it is. Craft name, we're going to put QuadLugs. Of course, you can name it anything you want. I'm reaching really far to type this in, so it's taking me a little bit longer than usual. Anyway, whatever you want to name it, put it in. If you don't want to name it, you don't have to. We're going to leave all that. Now here, we're going to set up our receiver. We need a serial-based receiver, and we need to put iBus. And if you remember, we had picked iBus in our transmitter when we did the setup. Okay, that's what you want there. Here, there's tons of information that's on the net. I'm not going to get into all of this. If you want to, set something up special, you can try it and see what it does. There's no problem with doing that. All we're doing here today is a quick setup to get you flying, and it'll fly well. And you can do all the changes you want to as you get to know the system. And again, tons of information, tons and tons of it. So anyway, we're going to leave all that like it is. We're going to leave that. We're actually good to go here. And if you need any help on any of this, please get with me. And, I'll give you a hand if I can help. Let's save and reboot. If for some reason this doesn't pull up automatic, you can, press connect here each time if you need to. Power battery, we're using a 3-cell, so we're going to leave everything like this, and I think it'll work fine. If you had a 4-cell or whatever, which we're not going to use on this setup, you can make changes here, but we're using a 3-cell, and we're going to leave it like that. PIDs. We're not going to mess with any of this. Again, tons of information. Change it if you want. You can try different things. I encourage it. Right now, it's really not necessary. It'll fly well. As you get used to it, and as you, learned about the controller, and as you learn about the controller a little bit more, this thing will do everything but sing to you. So you can make those changes at a later time. Right now, it's going to work really well. What we are going to do, though, is add some RC Expo. And what this is going to do, and it'll show you the curve here, it's going to make it a little bit easier to fly, a little bit user-friendly to fly. It's not going to be as sensitive. Let's just do it this way. We're going to go to 30. And here at 20. Okay? And let's save that. So this is the only change we're making. And that's just going to take some of the twitchiness out of for new pilots and give you a little bit of hand. Make the center of the stick a little bit duller to make it a little bit easier for you. We're going to leave everything like that. Again, wow, tons of things you can do with it. Check up on it later on. If you fly it a lot, you will tune it to how you like it. Okay, we're done there. Let's go to receiver. We're going to go ahead and plug in the battery. First of all, we're going to turn on our transmitter. And we'll turn it on. And we'll plug in our quad. Now, if you notice, there's your throttle up and down, your yaw left and right, your pitch back and forward, your roll left and right. And you want it to go that same direction. If it's backwards, you would need to go in and reverse one of the channels if it was. But it's working out that this one, pitch is good, roll is good, yaw is good, our rudder, and your throttle is good. Mode switch, you see it working there. Remember, we had this one at 1100, we had it 1500, 1800. There you go. This we set up as our motor arming, and you see it working there. Okay, we're good. This defaults to aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, and if you remember, we slide it back, aileron, there you are, channel 1, elevator, or pitch, throttle, yeah. Okay, so everything's working just as it's shown here. If it was backwards or if it wasn't operating the same, you can, pick it or you could change it. But we do not need that. It's set where we want it. Everything else, we're going to leave like it is. Again, as you get into it deeper, you can make some changes to it. Set it up the way you want it. We were going to arm the motors with a switch on switch C. So let's add a range. You can pick it here if you want to, or just flip the switch and it would automatically pick up. So this will be off, this will be on, and this will be on, just we don't want it to hit the switch by mistake. So we want to have it armed, the second two, this one and this one, off here. Done. Angle mode. Again, we're going to flip the switch to pick it, and we want all the way up in angle mode, so we're just going to move it like that. Horizon, let's flip it again. We want it in the middle, and that's where it's at. We're going to set up acro trainer, and again we'll flip it. We want it all the way down, and let's move that. You know, you can do this number if you want to, but it's moving it where we want it to be. Tons of things you could set up switches for, or the remaining switches if you wanted to. We're not going to mess with any of that right now. Again, later on, you can get into it all you want, even down to a lost, what they call lost beeper. So you could set a switch up, maybe even this one, to where if it crashed and you couldn't, or it went down, you couldn't find it, you can flip it and the beeper will go off and it alerts you where it's at. But we're not going to do that today. Let's do save. When it's all the way up, you see now it's lighting up. Horizon, acro trainer. We do arm. It'll show armed later on once we finish our setup. Okay, so we're good there. Motors tab. We're going to go ahead and turn the transmitter off. Okay, on motors tab, make sure the props are off, and they should be off until you're ready to fly. So never put on the props until you're ready to fly. Let's go ahead and turn this on, saying that we understand the risk. And let's do number one, slider number one. And if you notice, it's actually motor number 2 that's running. Number 2 is actually, slider 2 is actually number 4 motor running. So if you remember, we turned the controller and the ESC so the motors are mixed matched. We'll solve that now. So let's get us something to write with. And we'll put slider, motor, and slider number 1, we'll move it again. And that's motor number 2. So it'll be motor number 2. Slider number 2, and that's motor number 4. Slider number 3, that's motor number 1. Slider number 4, and that's number 3. Now we'll go in and correct that. Let's go to CLI, and we'll do resource. And let's move up and see. Motor number 1 is BOO. So slider number 1 is BOO. Slider number 2, B01. Slider number 3, A03. Slider number 4, A02. And again, right here. Okay, so let's get this fixed. Resource, space, motor, space, 2, space, BOO, enter. Resource, space, motor, space, forward, space, B01, enter. Resource, space, motor, space, 1, space, A03, enter. Resource, motor, 3, A02, enter, and then we'll type in save and enter. Now let's go check it and see how we did. Go back to motors. Let's tell it yes. Space, our slider number 1 is now indeed motor 1. Slider 2 is indeed 2. Slider 3 is motor number 3. Slider 4 is motor number 4. So we're in good shape. Let's go ahead and see the direction. Motor number 1 should be clockwise, and it is. Motor number 2 is counterclockwise, and it is. Number 4 is clockwise, and it is. Number 3 is counterclockwise, and it is. Good to go on all that. Let's unplug our battery. Let's move the master all the way up. We're calibrating our ESCs now. Let's plug it in. After the tone is finished, let's pull the master down. And it just calibrated all of the ESCs. Okay. So being that we're here and this is turned on, let's turn the transmitter on, and this is the arming switch, and it's arming. And it's off. Let's go ahead and test our failsafe. A way to test failsafe, when failsafe occurs, that you lose connection to your receiver, or if your battery or any reason it's not connected anymore to your craft, you want it just to stop and get to the ground. So we're going to test that. Let's arm it, and we're going to turn off the transmitter. And it did. That's exactly what we wanted to do. If we lose communication with the quad, for whatever reason, we wanted to stop flying. If it didn't do this, it would just continue flying at the speed and the direction you were going before. We don't want that. So let's go ahead and turn this back on. Okay. Let's try it again. And it went off. If you notice, you might hear it. It's real light. My buzzer is kind of messed up. You can hear the buzzer going off. So if this did happen and your battery was still intact, you would hear the buzzer and it'd be a lot louder. This buzzer is kind of messed up. It's not buzzing loud. So it'd be very loud buzz to help you find it. Let's go ahead and turn it back on. And we're good to go there. Okay, we're done there. OSD. Again, tons of information. I'm just going to give you enough to get you going. When you have your goggles on, when you first plug it in, you're going to see this logo, Betaflight. It doesn't last very long. It goes right out. You can leave it on if you want to, or you can turn it off. I'm going to use my main battery voltage. When you do that, you see it pop up here. You can put it anywhere as you want, and I'm going to put it right here. The fly mode, let's go ahead and stick this on, or put this on your screen. Craft name, of course, QuadLugs. Current draw. I really don't need that. But anyway, you can pick and choose what you want. Now, we do have warnings here, and it's going to show you low battery warning. I want that right in front of me. Again, you can put it anywhere as you want. And I think I'm going to put the main battery volt or usage right here. And, I don't like the way that looks. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and put, there we go. Okay, and that's all I want on mine. And you can see there's tons. Here, this is your post-flight. So after you fly and you land, this is going to give you information. You can choose it or not choose it. I'm going to let you do that. Really, you can turn it off. Just whatever you want to see on it. So warnings, there's a ton of warnings here. You can adjust those to what you need. And I'm going to let you do that. So, just mess around with it and see what you want on it. Now, when you put these on, the first time you put your goggles on, you may not see some of this stuff. If you don't, sometimes if it's here, it won't show up. It won't be in the area where your goggles are, showing you. So what you can do, if you don't see it in your goggles, this information that you had put there, just get back in your program, move these up, and with your goggles on, and you'll see that they show up. Okay, so first time that happened to me, I went, "Oh, where's it at? Where's it at?" And the whole time it was not in the right place. Okay, there we go. We're done there. Let's hit save. Black box, I'll let you get into that on your own a little bit later. This will monitor your whole flight so you can see if it's acting odd or something. And of course, we were in CLI earlier, and we did what we needed to do there. When you come out of this, it's going to automatically boot. So it looks like we're set up. We're ready to fly. Again, everything looks good here. Everything looks good. One thing we did not cover or use is BlHeli Sweep. And let me do something before we actually pull it up again. Let's go ahead, disconnect, and let's pull up BlHeli Sweep. It needs to be plugged in. If it's not, it'll tell you need to be. And we're going to do connect, but you want to be out of Betaflight. You want to read setup. And this is pulling up your ESC. So if you needed to reverse a motor, this is where you would do it. You would go here and hit reverse. And that particular motor would be reversed. That's ESC number 1. too. So, you know, depending on which one it is, it would reverse it for you. So right now it's showing ESC1 is normal, 2 is reversed, 3 is reversed, 4 is normal. Okay? And that's where you do it. As far as flashing new firmware onto your ESCs, I'm going to let you get into that. We're fine now, so we're not going to really mess with it. But in the future, it's something you can do, but I really wouldn't encourage it right now. You're good to go. Okay, so we're going to disconnect here. So if you had any motors reversed, this is where you would come to BlHeli, go to that program, and that's where you can do it. Super cool. So anyway, I think that's it. We're ready to go fly. This is Danny with QuadLugs. See you next time. I'll see you flying next time. The finishing touches. Not much left to do. The screws here, or the nuts here, were tightened up to secure the controls. This piece here will sit on top, and you know, we tighten it down with a nut on top. We put a zip tie through here. The antenna, you can run it this way and then secure it down here. Just make sure it's out of the way of the props. Or you can run it out the top like I did here. And then we'll get a piece of shrink tube and slide it over. And then go ahead and heat it up. And when you do, this makes for a very strong way to put on your antenna and to keep it out of the props. So we need to do this. The battery plug, I put a zip tie here and give it a little bit of, you know, room for it to move. And this will give you strain relief for the wiring. When you get in a crash, you're going to eject the battery one time or another. If you do, this wiring here could pull the pads out and ruin your ESC. So make sure you have some kind of strain relief here, and putting a zip tie, and make sure it goes around the wood on this one and not your wiring here. So make sure it goes around the wood, and this will give you great strain relief in whenever you get in your crash. The other thing we need to do is put your hook and loop, your Velcro on. I put the loop here and the hook on the battery. You can do it however you want. And then we need to run the battery straps, and they slide right in like that. When the battery is installed with the straps and the Velcro, then it makes for a very good battery installation. And I think that, completes the quad. Antenna mount, string relief, battery straps, your hook and loop, and I think that's it. The next thing is your props. This was clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. Install your props the same. Clockwise, counter, clock, counter. Okay. What I would do, these are the 5-inch props. What I would do though is, if you're first time, if you're learning, until you get comfortable, I would use the 4-inch props that are included in your stem kit, and it's installed the same way. You'll want your clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, and counter. So clock, counter, clock, counter. The 4-inch props are going to tame it down some. Not crazy amount, but some. And that's the perfect, I think, way to start learning how to fly. So you'll tame it down a little bit with the smaller props after you get very comfortable, then go over to your larger props. Really suggest that. It works. The one other thing is that when you installed your controls, these screws here were quite a bit longer. I cut about half inch off of the screws. So I cut about a ½ inch off. And when you do, I used a pair of wire cutters. This will be pretty sharp after you do it. You may want to file that down a little bit, to make sure it doesn't stick you. When you do file it down, if you file it down, make sure you do it this way so that none of the file shavings get into the controls. If you do, most likely you're going to burn out the controls. So make sure it's turned upside down and you do not get any of the file shavings into your controls. That's super important. Okay, this length that's left over, if you cut a ½ inch off, I mean, you don't have to cut any off if you don't want to right now, but if you cut a ½ inch off and you want to put a GoPro camera or something on it, they normally screw on like this. So to give you enough length here to be able to put a screw to hold your camera mount on. But you don't have to cut them off at the beginning. You can just leave it the length and cut it later on. Anyway, I think that's it. This is Danny with QuadLugs. We'll see you next time.